It's Footy Talks presented by Benjamin Moore. And right off the top of the show, let's just look back on what happened last night. We'll get to the Benjamin Moore player of the game in a few moments' time. But first off, I think it's fair to say it wasn't TFC's best night, but they found a way to get the job done against a team, KJ, that was unbeaten in 6 matches, had won all 3 games they'd played, the home games that they were playing at Red Bull Arena since the restart, and generally have been pretty strong, although they haven't been scoring as many goals as they would like. So I think Greg Vanney went in there with an understrength side, and they found a way to get the job done.
Yeah, the game's a funny one. That's why we love it, I suppose. You know, I don't think TFC probably on the basis of the performance deserved to win the game, but much like the game before, where they didn't deserve to draw the game, they deserved to win it. They didn't get the points there, so they get them back here. You know, I couldn't help but think about that game in Orlando where New York dominated them in the knockout stages and won by 3 goals to, was it 0 or 3-1 in the end? I can't remember. But
Don't forget Patrick Mullins. Don't forget Patrick Mullins.
I can't forget any number 13 for TFC. But, you know, I would just think at that point, I thought there was a potential message that New York could have delivered where, you know, they were bullied by TFC. They continued to be bullied by them, and they went out and did something different in that game. And maybe it was a bit of a history-defining match. Ultimately, TFC have since said, you know, we weren't really that up for that game. It didn't know whether it mattered anything. And last night kind of proved it. That, again, I think that there's a little bit of a bogey team here developing for New York City FC. And they created so many chances. Alex Bono, I'm sure we'll get to in a second, was tremendous on the night. But TFC looked pretty organized. New York City FC, Stephen, looked devoid of ideas in the final third. They dominated so many facets of the match, but TFC looked like the team that knew how to win, or at least knew how to dig deep and try and get something. Well, New York City FC, I don't think are quite as far along as in that kind of development as a maturation as a team.
Yeah, they were lacking some serious confidence in front of goal. Everything was good for New York City till it came to their box, or TFC's box, and the last final pass or final finish just was never quite to the quality needed to break TFC down. I think it was unusual and interesting, KJ, because of that game in Orlando where TFC more often than not play the role of the hunters, don't they? They go, they're the aggressors, they take the game to the opposition. They did the same in Orlando, and they got caught on the night by a really good New York City side who were on the front foot, pressed them well, stifled them, and, you know, really dominated the game, scored the goals at the right times, and embarrassed them a little bit. And so I think that there was a little bit of that coming into this game for Greg Vanney's men, and they were reluctant to allow that same game plan to happen. So we saw a more direct TFC, we saw a different formation, we saw a TFC playing the role of the hunted in a sense for once, and just kind of sitting in, absorbing pressure and waiting on their moments. And the press never really came from New York City, in my opinion. It was never really there. Maybe because TFC played so direct, but in the end, as New York City started missing chance after chance, and TFC were bedding in, I didn't feel like they were going to concede a goal. I also didn't feel like they were going to score a goal. I thought it was going to be 0-0, but they're a team that always seem to just have a moment. You know, it's usually quality. This time it was fortunate with a Acevedo handball. And then once the ball was put down in the penalty spot after the debacle a few weeks ago, it wasn't going to be the same again. Pozuelo was going to show his composure, put it away. And there they go, you know, hopping out of Harrison, New Jersey with 3 points in a game where it was probably their worst performance in a number of months for me, maybe even years, in terms of on the ball. But it doesn't matter if you get the points. They went with a game plan, they executed it, defended well, goalkeeper was great, and it was a big win, Luke, with a big game coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, that game coming up we'll look ahead to is against Columbus Crew, that are the top of the Eastern Conference right now. TFC sitting in 4th. There's a bit of a logjam in that top 4 after last night's action. Everybody was involved last night. You've got Columbus on 30 points at the top, and then you've got Orlando, Philadelphia, and TFC all on 25. And then a bit of a gap to 5th place with New England Revolution on 18, which is 7 points back with my math straight off the hop there.
Well done, mate.
I was a little bit nervous as I started going there, and I managed to do that one.
Well, you can learn counting by watching Whitecaps games these days.
Okay, we'll get onto that a little bit later on. The Benjamin Moore play of the game is the Pozuelo penalty. So producer Kev can share the screen and we'll take a look at this one. And so many interesting storylines surrounding a penalty kick. Not just the fact that this is the last minute of the game, or a couple of minutes to go. Not only the fact that it's 0-0, not only the fact that TFC screwed up their last penalty that they took with Piatti, but also the fact that Pozuelo has faced Sean Johnson a number of occasions before, and in all different manners. He's the only keeper that saved a penalty from Pozuelo. He's faced 2 Panenkas, including one on the debut, one in the last minute of the playoff game. This Pozuelo-Sean Johnson thing has lived for a while already, KJ. He's let in more penalties against TFC than any other team in Major League Soccer. And it seems as if it's going to just keep on going between Pozuelo and Sean Johnson.
Yeah, it does. I wonder if producer Kev can just rack it back a little bit and try and pause it to the moment Pozuelo does his backlift. And I just want to show people, if they can see it, when we if you can rewind it back a little bit to the moment, particularly on the live shot when Pozuelo has the backlift, because right now he's got Sean Johnson on toast.
He doesn't know what to do, does he? He's got no idea.
He has no idea, and that's not a knock on Sean Johnson. It's a compliment to Pozuelo and the development. And I know Pozuelo, this is all calculated going forward. He now knows what he's thinking. This is a whole procedure going forward. But when you see him standing there, he's petrified, because he thinks he's already got me twice on a Panenka. Surely he can't do it again. Is he going to go down the middle? And if you think before he goes on the back lift, he still can't move. And so, the Pozuelo, I think, I even talked about this on the goal that he scored a couple of weeks ago. He really hides the shot anyway, Stephen, not just a penalty, but he does a great job of disguising a shot, I think, in general, even when he's going to hit it with the right foot. And he does a great job on the penalties. There's not many people better, that can hide that shot. He doesn't know which side he can go to. He hasn't really gone to a goalkeeper's right yet. Still hasn't done that yet. But the story continue with those two 5 times now, obviously, that he's met, and Pozuelo's only been in MLS less than 2 years. So, and the other thing is, it's the 90th minute. It was the 90th minute in the playoffs when he scored the goal. He's had a 94th minute penalty against Atlanta to win it. There's all sorts of nicknames for Mr. 12 yards right now, but Iceman is another one, because he's just, it's remarkable, isn't it, Stephen, that when the game is on the line, the coolness and the calmness of this man just adds, I guess, to the qualities.
Yeah, I tried to build the moment up on air, saying he must be feeling a bit of pressure here and feeling the moment, but he wasn't, was he?
No.
He just looked like he was.
He had to. He had to have been something in his mind after what happened at BMO with that penalty with Piatti. Surely that weighs on him a little bit, even if he doesn't show it. You think he can just... He's that superior mentally in that situation that he can just freeze it out?
Yeah,
I do, and I think it's a special quality in the mentality, like you said. I think it's a ton to do with the quality of his striking the ball, like KJ says, the disguise he puts in it. He doesn't have to look at the ball like most mere mortals. And when I say mere mortals, I mean professional football players have to look down at the ball as they kick it. But this guy just knows where it is and is comfortable with, the connection that he gets on it. So he's allowed to keep his eyes up straight, looking at Sean Johnson the entire time. It was under no circumstances going to be Panenka on that penalty. That's all he was thinking about, Sean Johnson.
Yeah. He
was just thinking, there's no way this can happen to me a third time. He waits, and in the end, he just loses his balance because Pozuelo's calmer than him. He slots it in the net. It's remarkable from Pozuelo. It's a coolness and an assuredness, a confidence and arrogance, whatever you want to say, but it's deadly from 12 yards. And he's a guy that is going to miss very few penalties in his TFC career, in my opinion. I think maybe the Piatti incident will stand him in good stead, because he's not going to try that again, surely. And so
I think he will.
You think he will?
I think he will, yeah. I actually don't think... I don't know this, but I've spent some time with him talking about penalties. I bet you he doesn't regret anything about that Piatti incident either.
Well,
I really don't.
About it, isn't he? He doesn't regret it.
Right, so there you go. So I didn't see that. But, the other thing too is that he mentally processes the matchups with goalkeepers. So as I said before, the Clement Diop, he'd already taken a penalty not long before that. He'd taken one against him in the penalty shootout last year in the Canadian Championship. It's a different look against Clement Diop. What does it mean? What does it mean for the next time I meet him? It's the same with the calculation of Sean Johnson. And goalkeepers all around the world, all around the league, all goalkeeper coaches, they'll all be examining something from him. But every single run-up is the same. He doesn't give... There's no tells. There's no tells in his run-up. There's nothing he shows in the run up to the ball until he kicks the ball that shows you where he's going to put it. And they'll examine it to a finite detail. That's what high professional sports are. But it's all about that. I used to watch, you watch high professional sports, cricketers running in right now with the bowling, or rugby place kickers or NFL kickers. Fran Botica used to kick for Wigan when he was a rugby league. He never
what a name that is from the past. No one's heard of him, but you're probably watching this today.
Johnny Wilkinson, who won a World Cup for England. It's about the by perfect design, exactly the way they build up to strike the ball exactly right away every single time, the same every time. And he's got that down to a T. And even the greatest penalties in the world right now, the penalty takers in the world, you think about them, Hazard, whoever it is, they don't necessarily have that. They still have a little bit of a difference in the build-up. But I mean, Pozuelo, 10 penalties in MLS, and I haven't seen anything different in his run-up so far.
Well, when you look at that game last night, there was one thing, Stevie, that you're not now the only Scottish player to play for Toronto FC. So is there a little bit of you died last night with that not now being the case?
Every good team has a Scot in it, Luke. You can look at history. So TFC have got every chance of winning MLS Cup this year now that Tony Gallacher's joined.
What did you think of him coming in last night? And last night was exactly the sort of night that Greg Vanney brought him here for. A busy week. You've got 3 games. What doesn't want to ride Justin Morrow all game, every game? You've got Auro still out injured, so Larea can't come across. You get 60 minutes out of Gallagher, and then you can bring on someone like Morrow, who we've seen before can impact the game at both ends of the pitch for the final half an hour.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think at Morrow's age and where he is in this season, you can say, and I'll ask KG's opinion, and I think he's got some views, that you can ask Morrow to come on and say, right, you're 30 minutes, put everything into it, get forward, be a thrust on that left-hand side, a bit like Morrow evolved. I've not seen a lot of him really getting forward this season because I think he's conserving a bit of energy. So, and I can understand that. We've all done that as players. You conserve energy when you're feeling tired. When you're on in the first minute, you think, okay, I need to make sure I've got someone in the tank in the 80th minute. So you do play within yourself sometimes. But with having Gallagher there to play 60, 65 minutes and then Morrow with just a finite amount of time at the end is interesting. I thought he was comfortable. I thought he was assured on the ball, and he dealt with the overloads and wasn't erratic in the slightest. And I think that's promising. I felt for him a little bit that he was in that type of TFC performance, which, probably comes around one in every 20, 30 games. So the lad's going to have better nights in terms of being on the ball, expressing himself more in future games. But do you agree with my point, KG, and giving Morrow that kind of window of time to say, right, put everything into a third of this match and let's see your best, and Gallagher and him might have more moments like that where they kind of swap in for each other.
Yeah, I think they need to give Justin the opportunities to be, when he's on the field, he can maximise everything he's got. And, I think it's fair to say that sometimes he's probably struggled physically to do that this season. And yeah, I agree with you. I think, I do think there's a clear idea the way TFC want to attack down the right-hand side, whether it be Richie Larea or Auro. And so I think your left-sided player needs to be a little bit more conservative. I think Tony Gallacher last night, it was almost like he almost sat like a back three sometimes. It was so conservative. I think it was clear by design. He almost in the same line as his centre-backs at some point. So I think that's clear because they can give the freedom of the park a little bit more to Richie Larea. I do think for the team to reach upper echelons of the next level, and maybe we keep talking about that, but I do think they lack crosses. I think they really lack crosses, particularly to attack the byline. I think if you're an opposition fullback and you play TFC, you think for the most part, everything's in front of me. I'm not going to worry about overlaps in wide areas and ping, 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 and you're behind me, much like the way LAFC played last night. If you watch the way LAFC played last night, I haven't seen the heat maps yet, but I would imagine that it would be all pinned towards the byline in their attacking zones. You don't see that at all in TFC, and that's not the way they play. Pozuelo and Piatti, it's very intricate, it's very inside anyway. But I think that's another level that they can bring, and maybe Morrow with a little bit more of a time off and a bit more physical ready can get forward a little bit more and create those crosses similar to the way we saw TFC play in 2017.
So just on last night, we talk about Justin Morrow getting a rest. The other player to get a rest was Quentin Westberg and Alex Bono coming in. And we've had Alex Bono on this show back in, I think it was back in when he played at Disney and got the 0-0 draw there against New England Revolution. He came on just after that, and we talked with him about, how difficult it is for a goalkeeper, especially, someone like him who is an MLS Cup winner. He was the man that was there when TFC went and won it all in 2017. To lose his place, and Greg Vanney has talked about Alex Bono and how impressed he has been with his mental approach in terms of always being switched on, driving himself all the time to get better. It's clear that Quentin Westberg is the number one goalkeeper right now. The choice that Greg Vanney has made, the way he wants to play out from the back, and Westberg has that ability. But TFC right now, and we saw it again last night, and Alex Bono deserves immense amount of credit for this, KJ, that he is able to come in a second start of the season, perform like that. There was one where he came across, tried to punch, didn't quite get there, but that was probably the only misstep all night that he made. They've got two number one goalkeepers, haven't they? Really?
Yeah,
they have got two number one goalkeepers. And I just wonder how long that can continue. And yes, they'd love to have Alex Bono as their backup. He's a great backup. But at what point does Alex Bono have to say, and he went to the championship to Barnsley in the offseason, didn't he, last January, to train there. But at what point does he have to say, I'm better than this? Now is the point. Now's the time. And I think he already knows it. I think obviously he's not going to go into Ali Curtis in the middle of a playoff push and start to say, I've got to move. But I think Alex would admit that he's a very different goalkeeper and a very different young man than he was 12 months ago. I think he would admit that the chances have been, I don't think he's not been given enough chances to play, but that's obviously the unfortunate nature of being a backup goalkeeper where you are contending for one position. I think it's clear that he was waiting for an opportunity to prove to the rest of the league and maybe to himself again that he can go out there and do that on a consistent basis. And last night's 90-minute canvas was blank, and he went out there and it was an artist, and he painted an absolute perfect picture of the way that he can develop as a goalkeeper in Major League Soccer. And there's a lot of teams out there in MLS right now who have goalkeepers who aren't as good as Alex Bono. And they're looking at that going, okay, if you're not going to play him, we're going to get him. And I think Alex Bono has to cause that conversation to happen in the offseason for Toronto FC. He's 26 now. He's reaching the prime. He's better goalkeeper now than he was when he won MLS Cup. He may not be better in the eyes of Toronto FC than Quentin Westberg. And if that's the case, the fair thing to do would be to say, okay, well, we can have a good acquisition here, get some allocation money back or whatever it is and return it and give him the chance to go ahead and play, because he has to play, Stephen. And I think as the evidence showed last night, that he's a more than capable player of playing in this level. And, I think not only as a goalkeeper, but I think as a true leader, as a good example of a good person, he would be an outstanding asset to many MLS clubs.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that he is a starting goalkeeper in MLS. I think that he was rocked by the fact that he was, in a sense, discarded by TFC and Greg Vanney for Westberg, and he didn't get as many opportunities. I think the collateral he had built up, and I know he was having a rocky time when Westberg came in, but I think the decision was made really quickly that Westberg was number one and Bono would have very limited opportunities. And mentally, that really weighed on the lad. I think that his performance is dipped, his training potentially dipped, and you saw a goalkeeper who was struggling to work out who he was, what his identity was, and how he could get his career back on track. He's done that now. His career's back on track. He's training exceptionally well. He said that last night after the game. He feels like he's in his kind of best form. He knows who he is at 26 years old, the professional that he wants to be. Great guy, very good goalkeeper. Now, the question for me is, it's not a question, did TFC keep him into next season? I think that if I'm him, I'm going in there and saying, I need to go, I want to go. The question for me is, does he go to another MLS team or does he go to Europe? And does he go and maybe try his luck, I guess, in Europe, play with a championship, a League One team, or somewhere else in Central Europe to try and show his worth there. And I think he might even take a scenario where he has to go into another fight again to gain a number one spot. I think that would probably benefit TFC as well. I don't think they want this lad turning up in Minnesota or wherever it may be, San Jose. I'm thinking of some teams off the top of my head that might be interested in the goalkeeper, and him then doing really well and coming back to bite them a little bit. So I think potentially Europe might be an option for him in the January KJ, but too good to be sitting on the bench. The time is now. He'll be a good pro. He'll stay till the end of the season, and he'll do the right things. It's quite frankly a really awkward and difficult time to move clubs anyway, but he'll be pushing hard to get away.
The other thing too, quickly about Alex, is that he's a guy who obviously wears his emotions on his sleeve, and I think that, there's some people have said he's training better now, and I think it's fair to say that that time when he did lose his job, that we're human beings, and he may have struggled with it, but people like that, if you want them to be open and big leaders and big personalities when things are going well, you also have to understand when things are not going well, that they find it very difficult to hide their emotions. You can't have it both ways. You can't have a positive influence in the dressing room and be a good guy and be there for people and have a smile on your face when things are going well, and then suddenly things aren't going well. You just want him to be quiet and be himself. He had to go through that process to find himself a little bit more, to gain that confidence within himself, to make sure on a daily basis his commitments to his craft was there, understanding that it wasn't always just for TFC, it was for Alex Bono. And going forward, if TFC see him play at BMO Field in the future for another MLS team and he becomes an MLS All-Star, then that's too bad. They have to just understand that what they have to, if he is, as to Matthew's point on there, becomes another Stephen Fry, then that's okay. That's okay. You've got, if everybody believes that Quinton Westberg is a little bit better, then you have to go with your goalkeeper that you've got. You cannot also pay, by the way, what you're paying for a backup goalkeeper. It can give you financial flexibility to go somewhere else. So maybe Alex succeeds, and so does Toronto FC in the end, if they use those funds successfully in other areas.
I don't think they want that though, Luke.
But as a club, you have to be confident in your decisions, don't you? You have to be. Like people would point to Mark Anthony Kaye and what happened there, and turning up at LAFC and what he's managed to do. But he's very different now to when he left. And sometimes, different people see things out of different players. And I just think that, as KJ says, in a salary cap league, there aren't many MLS teams that are able to have two number one standard goalkeepers in Major League Soccer, and at some point they're going to have to let him advance his career, aren't they?
Yeah, but well, the other question is, will Alex Bono ever have the real true profile of what Greg Vanney's looking for in a goalkeeper? Probably not, because his feet are getting better, but he's not going to spray the ball about like Westberg. He's not going to play the passes that Westberg plays, and that seems to be high up the list of what Greg Vanney wants in a goalkeeper. So to that point, Luke, then maybe it is to let the lad go. And Stephen Fry can't do that either, by the way. He's not got the Westberg ability. And so people leave football clubs for the right reasons in terms of what identity the manager sees the club playing in. And they may go on to have brilliant careers and they may develop, and sometimes that happens. I think it happens to the best clubs in the world. In TFC, it's happened to them for sure. Mark Anthony Kaye is a great example. There's some other young lads there. Liam Fraser's another one who's going to want to be leaving this club sometime soon if his opportunities are still limited. And they're going to have to say, well, that's just football. On you go. Good luck to you. And if he comes back to being, a Canadian international, winning 50, 60 caps and playing in Europe or elsewhere in MLS, that's just one of the things. But when you're a proper big club, you make the decisions and you just say, all right, go on with it. This is the decision that we're making. This is the path that we're going. We're going to let Alex Bono go. We're going to get something considerable back for him. And we're going to go and recruit the profile that we want and the number two to push Quinton Westberg in the future.
There is the depth, though, there for Greg Vanney, as we've seen, and that's what TFC will hope will carry them forward over the next few weeks in a situation where they are playing pretty much 3 games a week between now and November 8th when Decision Day comes in Major League Soccer. And the next of those games is going to be a really intriguing match on Sunday as TFC play at home in Hartford, Connecticut, Pratt & Whitney Stadium at Rentschler Field against Columbus Crew, the side that right now is the standard in Major League Soccer. They won again last night against Minnesota. Zella Ryan has been such a great pickup for them. They've won 9, lost 1, and tied 3 so far this season. They've scored 22 goals along the way. They're 5 points clear at the top of the Eastern Conference. Tim Bezbatchenko, of course, former TFC general manager, is the president there. And you talked last night, and we'll get into this a little bit more later on, KJ, when we move on to the Whitecaps. But you've talked in the past about the different tiers that there are in Major League Soccer. And Columbus, while they're waiting for this move to the new stadium, just a couple of years ago, we're talking about a franchise that was going to move to Austin. Columbus was going to lose its team. It was a franchise that wasn't spending the money. And you talk about MLS 1, 2, 3. They certainly were down the bottom of those in terms of the clubs that you would tier within the league and their spending power and their future and where they can go. And now I think they're proving that they're certainly not in that top tier, right? They're not an MLS 1, but they're very close to the top of the next tier, pushing to try and, without that financial ability, try and compete by signing those players like Lucas Zelarayan that has made such a difference.
Yeah, I think they are MLS 1 because I do think they punch above their weight. I actually think that MLS is better when they're better because, obviously there's a connection to the history of the club, and, we don't need every single big market to be successful. You need those markets to prove to other markets how it's done. And yes, you have to eventually go out there and spend the money, like small markets are considerably. Many are doing now. We've seen Sporting Kansas City, stepping out of their comfort zone and spending $9 million on Pozuelo, getting the Zelarayan $7 million. They understood that now was the time within MLS to take that next step. They needed a difference maker. You need a difference maker, and that makes everybody else better. We keep coming back to this, but that's what the Whitecaps don't have. You need that player who makes everybody else better on the field because you spend the money. And Zelarayan has elevated Santos's game considerably, right? And then Nagby comes in and he has elevated Artur's game considerably, and they dominate midfield. And the rest of the pieces are already there, Stephen, because the continuity is there and they're used to playing with each other. So they haven't made massive overhauls. They've sprinkled in little dust areas. And then Zardes was a good pickup. He's an MLS, considerable player in this league. He knows what it's like. So that's the difference to me, is that if you have key players and you spend the money in those areas, the rest of the players are getting better because they're in that team. And Columbus is the best example. Like, you and I were impressed with them from the start in Orlando. And in the end, they got knocked out of what you can happen in a knockout game. But for me, they look an enormous threat to make MLS Cup from the East.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're the best team in the East at the moment. They're putting everything together. They've recruited tremendously well. Tim Bezbatchenko deserves a lot of credit for that. The way that he's taken that money, and it's one thing having money. It's another thing spending it well. Getting it right. The DP is such a critical position in MLS, and Zelarayan's been absolutely terrific. But I also think it's the pickup in Nagby, the trade to get Nagby. Sensational to do something like that, but it's like guys like Mensah who are playing better than they have done at the back there, who have took their game on to a level that we've seen before. We know he's capable, but I think at times too inconsistent in MLS. He's been awesome this season. Zardes up top again. He'll put the ball in the back of the net if you get him the right service and you get the right pieces round about him. So everything's fitting for them at the moment. That they're starting to bring in some fresh blood, some young guys like young Berhalter, Greg Berhalter, the US coach's son, who's terrific in the middle of the park there. He allows a bit of rotation between Nagby and Artur, who has been one of our favourite players, KJ, hasn't he? He came to MLS. We love him and the way he gets around the field. So I like a lot of things about them. I've just praised Tim Bezbatchenko and he deserves it, but I also think Caleb Porter deserves a lot of credit for the way that he's starting to get the best out of that team. Distinct style, way of playing, some different options. You get the pace of Diaz in a wide area, and then you've got the skill and artistry of the Santos. So you keep everybody guessing all the time. You've got these different options, and they look like they're the team to beat. Excited for Sunday's game. I think TFC will be well up for it because they never like when anybody, it gets prominent in the East and sort of challenges their perch at the top there. So they're probably right up for this game to show that they're still one of the major contenders in the East.
We'll have it for you on TSN on Sunday night as TFC go home to Hartford and play Columbus Crew. So we'll see you on TSN. KJ, the details?
I believe we're on live. Pre-game show at 7. We have a pre-game show this week. 7 and 7:30 kickoff. 4 as I look at my calendar. Toronto FC against Columbus, followed by Whitecaps at home to Portland at 10 in Portland.
Strange.
That works well.
What can go wrong?
Exactly. Poor Whitecaps.
We'll see you next week.